Thousands of trucks are sitting on lots, unsold and unused. Ram dealers aren't simply offering discounts anymore, they're unloading inventory. Prices are falling at a pace few expected. But here's what most people don't realize. This downturn isn't confined to dealership lots. It's moving toward your trade-in value, your financing terms, and the cost of your next truck. So, what's driving brand new Rams to sell at what feels like wholesale pricing? Why are dealers afraid of being stuck with inventory? And what about the customers who paid full price just a few months ago? Once you understand what triggered the first break, you'll realize the discounts aren't the real story. They're just the warning signal. The panic didn't slowly build inside Ram dealerships. It hit instantly. One morning, a customer walked up to a new Ram half-ton priced near $80,000, glanced at the sticker for a few seconds and said, "I can get this same truck for half that somewhere else." That moment made it clear something had already shifted, and dealerships were behind the curve. Within hours, more customers echoed the same claims: massive discounts elsewhere, huge price cuts, dealers undercutting one another. Soon, no two stores were quoting the same numbers. Some were slashing prices so aggressively it looked like distressed inventory. Others were discounting brand new units beyond reason just to stay afloat another week. By day 2, phone calls slowed dramatically. Shoppers weren't browsing, they were just waiting to see who would cave first. Dealers, afraid of getting stuck with overpriced 2025 and 2026 models, started dropping prices faster than anyone expected. Trucks that once held strong value were suddenly selling at dramatic losses, and, honestly, no one knew where the bottom would be. Then came the bigger realization: the factory wasn't slowing production. You'd think price drops would stabilize the situation, but instead, it just accelerated everything. Dealers were already selling at razor-thin margins, yet shipments just kept arriving. Transport trucks rolled in non-stop, turning dealership lots into storage yards. Inventory managers had to redraw lot maps every morning as space disappeared. Trucks were crammed into every possible corner. Service lanes, behind buildings, angled tightly together. Technicians sometimes had to climb in through passenger doors because the driver's side was wedged in too tight. Supply was overwhelming, while demand was weakening in real time. Dealers pleaded for production relief. Instead, allocation formulas continued based on last year's inflated demand. Corporate projections hadn't adjusted. Customers saw packed lots and assumed desperation, which pushed negotiations even lower. When inventory visibly stacks up, buyers believe dealers will accept almost any offer. Inventory wasn't just building, it was changing buyer behavior. Every extra truck signaled vulnerability, and, vulnerability drove deeper discounts. Dealers initially hoped higher sales volume would offset lower margins, but honestly, the opposite happened. During internal audits, heavily discounted trucks were still losing money after accounting for floor plan interest and aging costs. Some units were thousands underwater. The real damage came from time. Vehicles sitting beyond 90 days triggered escalating interest charges. Many were well past that threshold. The cost of holding inventory erased any profit left from discounted sales. Dealers weren't cutting prices out of strategy, they were doing it to survive. Finance managers across the network saw the same pattern. Once a truck aged too long, the only option was to liquidate at a deep loss. The market wasn't driven by greed, it was driven by financial pressure. And survival tactics started causing long-term harm. Discounts moved trucks, but, honestly, destroyed momentum and margins at the same time. Dealers expected corporate support once profits inverted. Instead, Stellantis raised sales targets. During conference calls, leadership maintained that volume goals were still achievable, even as unsold inventory filled dealership lots. Worse yet, bonuses tied to hitting volume targets were adjusted upward. Dealers now needed to sell even more trucks at minimal or negative margins to qualify for factory incentives. Missing targets meant losing critical financial support altogether. It was a no-win situation: sell at losses to chase bonuses, or miss targets and lose factory money entirely. Meanwhile, marketing continued promoting premium pricing, creating a disconnect between advertised value and real-world discounting. Customers noticed. Confidence weakened. Dealers began feeling isolated as corporate optimism clashed with on-the-ground reality. This wasn't a temporary slowdown, it was becoming structural. The crisis didn't begin at the showroom level, it actually began with forecasting models that projected continued strong demand. Corporate relied heavily on algorithms that were, trained on the previous year's unusually strong truck sales. Those models ended up treating pandemic-era demand as if it was a permanent baseline. They just assumed customers would tolerate rising prices indefinitely. But when economic conditions shifted and buyers became, more cautious, the models failed to adjust quickly enough. Production commitments had already been made. By the time the miscalculation was clear, trucks were built, shipped, and just sitting unsold nationwide. The first domino had already fallen. At the same time, Stellantis shifted away from the Hemi V8 toward the new Hurricane inline-6 engine. Internally, it was positioned as a major technological advancement, more efficient, modern, and innovative. But leadership underestimated the emotional connection many truck buyers had with the Hemi. Loyal customers questioned why a proven engine was being replaced. Rumors about durability spread quickly online. Social media amplified skepticism. The Hurricane wasn't seen as progress, it was seen as untested. Dealers reported hesitation across multiple regions. Instead of strengthening the brand, the engine transition created friction with core customers. Even when limited V8 options returned, trust had already been damaged. The timing couldn't have been worse. Marketing doubled down on premium messaging, cinematic campaigns, and lifestyle branding to justify higher pricing. The strategy leaned heavily into luxury and innovation themes, but the market had shifted. Buyers were dealing with higher interest rates, insurance increases, and tighter budgets. Messaging focused on aspiration while customers focused on affordability. The disconnect was immediate. Instead of addressing financial concerns, campaigns ignored them. And in a fragile market, ignoring buyer reality only deepened